Thank you.
Welcome to the Spirit in Mind broadcast with your hosts, Bishop C. Guy Robinson and Dr. Jonathan Shepherd, where we explore faith and mental health.
That's all I did. My engineer
coming
there.
What is going on? Oh, $80,000.
Well, hello and welcome to Spirit in Mind, where we discuss current affairs with faith and mental health perspectives. I'm Bishop Guy Robinson, and it is an honor, a blessing, really, to have this time to share with you once more. And again, that's right, it's time for Spirit in Mind. And you can be a part of our discussion when we get into our content. If you'd like, you can call us here live at the studios of Praise 106. The number is 443-380-2803. 443-380-2803. We'd love to hear from you as we get into our content in just a few moments. But first, we need to hear from our colleague and co-host, Dr. Jonathan Shepherd. Hello, Dr. Shepherd.
Hey, and hello, Bishop, and good afternoon to everyone out there. It's so good to be with you all on another edition of Spirit in Mind.
Listen, we're so grateful that you're with us. You can let someone know that it's time for Spirit in Mind. And of course, you can stay connected with us throughout the week by several means, all of the various streaming platforms. And Dr. Shepherd will review a couple of those so we can stay connected.
Absolutely. It's always a pleasure to go over the different ways that we can stay connected. And we have been hearing from you all. And so continue to keep that momentum going. We love to hear how you are watching, how you're listening to the show. I was with Bishop Robinson just this past week as he had his book signing. Did a tremendous job. And it's so awesome to hear how many people are listening, how many people are watching. And we continue to gain momentum. We have been on this show 4 years. Haven't always been in the studio for 4 years, but we've been doing this for 4 years, and we enjoy it. And we want to make sure that you all are getting the latest updates, the latest developments as we continue to bring to you good material that will help you spiritually and mentally and emotionally. Bishop C. Guy Robinson, as I just mentioned, he does have a new book, and I'll allow him to talk more about that. But you can go and look up the various things that Bishop C. I. Robinson is doing. He is a teacher, he's an author, he is a pastor, and he takes all of those professions very seriously. Of course, he's a husband, he's a father, he's a grandfather, but I am so impressed by the way in which he maintains all of those different things, but never losing his identity. And so you want to tune into such a show such as this and make sure that you're able to learn and grasp all the materials and knowledge that he is out there providing for us. So you can go to CGR Ministries, Facebook, CGR Ministries, on Instagram, CGR Ministries, even on YouTube, and you can see all the wonderful ways to stay connected to what Bishop is doing. And then, if you're in need of direct care services, why don't you come on over to my website, drjonathanshepherd.com. I will be there to be able to answer your questions. My team is ready to answer your questions. If you're in need of direct care services in the state of Maryland, in the state of District of Columbia, well, it's not really a state, but the District of Columbia, the territory, I guess, I can service you there. If you're in need of questions or have questions about providers throughout the country, I am well informed of different providers throughout the country and will be happy to help you if you're in need of a provider. I'm so blessed to have a growing network of providers and colleagues who allow for me to make referrals. And even within the faith community, if you're in need of persons to be able to talk to your pastor, talk to your congregation, be able to talk to various corporations, organizations that are not faith-based, please look us up. And I say us, that means Bishop C. Guy Robinson, that means myself, because we're able to speak to the various situations, the various ills that really attack and really will overwhelm some churches, overwhelm some corporations if they don't know how to adequately deal with the mental health challenges that the employees, that the congregants, and everyone else who is a part of that organization. So look us up, drjonathanshepherd.com. Yes, I took a little bit extra more time today to talk about this because we are getting literally responses each week, engagements and requests. We want people to know that we're apt and ready to service the community.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we look forward to staying connected. And again, you can let someone know that it's time for Spirit in Mind. We're right here live at Praise 106. And we've been talking about transitions. And I want to echo Dr. Shepherd's mention of this past week and thank everyone for your support of the Soul Care Birthright. It's already been so well received by so many persons. We're grateful for you doing that and look forward to continuing dialogue on this important subject of that occurs at the intersection of our Christian faith and mental health. So we've been talking about transitions. We're going to transition, and Dr. Shepherd's going to lead us into our subject content for today.
Absolutely. And so this is the book. You want to get the book. If you're on radio, you want to go and get to a device where you can get on Amazon or another one of the platforms and order the Soul Care Birthright, Theology of Mental Health for Ministerial Practice. You do not have to be a minister or in the practice of ministry to read this book, because let me tell you, even as I read it, I was reading it even this morning. I tell you, there's so many people who I want to ship this book to help them to understand all that is happening within their lives and give some type of another perspective of how to be able to guide people who are dealing with mental health issues that could be themselves or even other people. So please go get this book, The Soul Care Birthright. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things I read today that align with transitions. I was just so impressed with Bishop's PowerPoint presentation and his dialogue with the congregation on Wednesday as he did the book signing, but he also prepped the people to what to expect as they read. And let me tell you, he did not disappoint. I was able to see those things as he discussed Wednesday, and as I read the book, I really was enthralled as to, wow, this is a different perspective of how to view the interaction and the intersection between faith and mental health. So without further ado, Bishop talks about the medical model for soul care. And really, I may have to quiz Bishop today to talk a little bit about that before I can even jump off into the section. Bishop, you talked about the medical model of soul care, and that is such a model or ideological framework that you discussed in there. Can you just share with us that particular framework and why that's so important for people to understand, especially as you are looking at the intersection between faith and mental health?
Absolutely. So we can start a little bit by talking about a little bit, if I can venture into an area that I'm really a novice in, but let's talk about the criminal justice system. There are two significant ideological frameworks that can be helpful for us to keep in mind. One model is called the just desserts model, and that means it really deals with guilt, punishment, being absolved, those kinds of things, the transgression of the law, and if you will, pardon and or punishment. And the other model is the medical model. And the medical model deals with something as not a crime to be punished, but an illness to be treated. And so when you use that, and we know from our own society today that when you identify your framework, it matters whether you are saying that something is criminal or whether it is illness. And so, that determines even how sentencing can happen. And some people have made comments before referring to the inequities in our society, that when certain concerns affect one community, it's treated with a criminal mindset and a law and order policy is applied. And when it moves into other communities that may be more affluent or considered more powerful historically in the society, then it's no longer a matter of law and order, but it's an illness. Why does that matter? Because once you set the framework, you determine the treatment. So it can literally determine whether we deal with you in terms of law and order and incarceration, or whether we deal with you in terms of a medical model that deals with treatment. I want to suggest theologically that both of those models are biblical. There is the concept of dealing with things in terms of, God is our judge. The Bible refers to him as the righteous judge because his judgments are right. Our system is subject to corruption. But the Bible says the judgments of the Lord are right. And he is the righteous judge. And so there certainly is a judicial model in which we are pardoned for our transgressions, but there is also a medical model in which Jesus describes himself as the great physician, if you will, or what we call the great physician. But he said actually those who are well don't need a physician, implying that I am here to be the physician to those who need care. And the prophet Isaiah said that with his stripes we would be not punished, but healed, not even pardoned, but healed. And so there is a balm in Gilead, as the Negro spiritual goes, that heals the key sin-sick soul. The song Rock of Ages says, let the water and the flood from thy wounded side which flow be of sin the double cure. That's again, so both models are applicable. But if we're going to do trauma-informed care as the church, and if we're going to engage in healthy collaborative relationships with the mental health community, because the very term mental health denotes a medical model. If we're going to do that, then we have to become at least equally, if not more so, proficient in a medical model of theological concerns as we are in the judicial.
Absolutely. And so there's two lanes of thought, and we'll see how far we get today in this. Let me tell you, Bishop had to set that foundation because it helps me to lead to figure out which are two lanes I want to go down today, and then we'll come to the next lane at our next session. But, Bishop, even as you were just saying that, it really resonates with me that framework determines treatment.
Absolutely.
That is huge. Now, I really want us to grasp a hold of that because it really does apply to so many different areas of our lives. That framework determines treatment. One of the things that I have the privilege of being a part of with the DC Department of Behavioral Health is being able to see how our behavioral health clinicians are able to provide treatment for those who may find themselves in a criminal situation.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that you also must know is that within the criminal justice system, you will find multiple persons who have mental illness. And what you'll see is that within our jails, that it literally is the largest mental health facility. That's not a joke. That really is the truth. And within our criminal justice system, the prisons, the jails, the places where we hold people, we will find multiple persons with mental illness. And it can be a travesty if we are only looking at those persons from a judicial lens, as you were saying, a judicial model of care. Yes, they did something that hurt someone else. They may have assaulted somebody else. God forbid, they may have killed somebody else. And yes, that must be dealt with consequences. But if you do not handle the underlying symptom that caused those behaviors that led to those consequences, you're just literally penalizing someone for having an illness. And we see that over and over and over again in behavioral health. And it can be quite discouraging, I'll be honest with you, because you will notice where a person may have a psychosis, a person may suffer from psychotic disorder, a person may suffer from a mood disorder, which bipolar disorder does fall under the category of. And in the midst of having that disorder meaning unable to function properly, if you do not treat that disorder, if you do not apply that model, that medical model of care, then you're just penalizing this person for something that they really have, I won't say no control over, but we have not dealt with the source of what's causing the behavior. And again, Bishop, that's why I love it. That's why I had to spend so much time reading on that today and focusing on that today, because you can see it. I know your book approaches it from the faith community perspective per se. But let me tell you, this model and way of thinking can be applied in so many different other areas of our lives.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stop right there.
No, that really is major, and it's so very important. First of all, because both models are in the scripture, and both models are God's approach to the human condition. History, if you want to deal with the church history, we have a longer history in the Western church of leaning more towards the judicial model, and the Eastern church, meaning the eastern part of the world, has focused and leaned towards the medical model. But both are important so that we don't, to stay with the analogy, end up sending, if we're going to do effective ministry, or even effective care for others, then we have to be mindful of both so that we don't send lawyers into operating rooms.
Absolutely.
And physicians into courtrooms. So they're both important so that we know which model to determine.
And there's a need for both.
Absolutely.
There's a need for both. When I go into a courtroom to testify in a case, I'm going in there as a physician. I take my cues from the lawyers, they set me up, but I do not take the place of that lawyer. And so we want to make sure that we know our roles, know our places when we're providing the care. But it's also important for the people who are receiving the care to know that difference too. So you don't want to be a person who's in need of care and you need to go have an operation for your heart and then you end up going to a brain surgeon. That doesn't make sense.
Right.
So that's why it's the duality of knowledge here. You want to make sure you know who you're going to. That's why it's so important. That's why I make the statement that this book is not just for leaders. You want to make sure that this book is even being spread and distributed amongst those who are non-leaders, because that's important for them to recognize. Let me just say this. So along with that, with the transition piece, so many times, if I continue to read more about the medical model of soul care, again, that's chapter 7. I put that in the chat for those who are following along on our social media pages. That's chapter 7. So you don't want to miss chapter 7, all right? And then chapter 8 goes on to talk about a trauma-informed church. Man, that is powerful. A trauma-informed church. Because when you think about being trauma-informed and then being the church, the aggregation of body of believers, it was so important, Bishop, and I would love to hear for you to expound upon this, even as I read, the need for the care after you have experienced the trauma. So in your book, you highlight how Jesus was coming out of the wilderness experience and how the enemy was defeated. But even after the enemy was defeated, he still had to have ministering angels to come to him to refresh him, to restore him after the traumatic situation that he encountered with the enemy. Bishop, please elaborate on that, and for the need for a trauma-informed church, but just the need also for the care after going through a trauma. Because I'll submit to you, many people, they transition, they get to the new place, but they have not taken the time to refresh themselves and get the healing that they need.
Oh, wow. Dr. Shepard, thank you for that, mentioning that part. So you said it all. Trauma is to understand that there is a traumatic event. That's the thing that happened, if you will, whether it's a pandemic or any other, troubling or injurious experience. Then there's the traumatic experience. That's how each person is processing what happened, and multiple people could be at the same event or have, or even in the same home when the trauma happened, but not have the same inner workings and perceptions and coping mechanisms of the experience. And then there's subsequently the effects. And so that becomes significant in the text that you lifted, that we talk about in Soul Care Birthright, because Jesus, who models for us, of course, he is our Savior. Of course, he is our Messiah. He's also our exemplar in terms of the example that he provides on how to live victoriously in this life. And he went through a wilderness experience. There's some trauma for you. He was tempted, which means in the New Testament, his loyalties and convictions were tested. And so they were tested. And after finishes, he defeats the devil, which is important for us theologically because it lets us know that the devil is real for us of Christian faith. It's not a neurotic projection. It's not an imagination. But Jesus actually in another verse said, I beheld Satan, which means I saw him. And Paul carried that to say we should not be ignorant concerning his devices. And so the poet Charles Baudelaire once famously said the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing us of his non-existence. And so it's important to keep that in mind. After the enemy was defeated, that text says, and he departed for a season. And so the devil now at that point is gone. He's defeated. And yet here we see God the Father sending ministering angels to God the Son. The devil is no longer, he doesn't have omnipresence. He's gone. The traumatic event has been survived, and Jesus has, in essence, survived the wilderness and passed the test. But he still has very human needs, so he is fully God. But the text implies that in his humanity, there are needs that need to be ministered to post-traumatic event.
Wow.
And so we could think of that now as ministering angels can come in many forms, whether it is pastoral message, pastoral care, whether it is psychotherapeutic sessions or 2 or 3. It can come in many forms, but it is so that that's the Matthew account. When we read Luke's account, it says that when Jesus returned from that wilderness experience, he returned in the power of the Spirit. And then he begins to declare, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he is anointed. And so I would suggest that what enables Jesus in his humanity to go into ministry in the power of the Spirit and not in the residue of his trauma is that angels were sent in between the end of the wilderness and the beginning of his public ministry. There were ministering angels who ministered to the needs of the human Savior after surviving the traumatic event of the wilderness.
Thank you, Bishop, because I think that is a piece that we miss at times. And again, I'll just be honest. At times where I'm ready to get over and just be done with the experience. I went through the traumatic experience. I went through the event. That's what you talk about. The event, the experience, the effects. I went through the event. The event is over. I transitioned. I got over it. I made it through. I'm done. But I have not taken the time to allow, as the word says, ministering angels, but as you also talk about, those ministering angels can come in various different forms. It can come through counseling. It can come through other persons who can help you to work through those various different things that you had to encounter. There's a statement that I wrote and I actually underlined in the book to those following along with me. This is chapter 8. So we're dealing with chapter 7 and chapter 8. I'm purposely saying that out loud because I want you to go and read the book. You gotta read the book. You're gonna get so much understanding. Your mind will open as you read these chapters, chapter 7, chapter 8. But there's a line that says addressing the residual effects of a traumatical experience. Sorry. It's critical to breaking the addictive behaviors, unhealthy attachments, and any other issues that impede a survivor's progress. Wow. That right there, I mean, you can hang so many different things on that one sentence. If you are wondering why your progress is being impeded as you have made the transition, this sentence right there probably will give you the solution that you're looking for. Because I'll leave it alone.
We can stay there because at that point, if you stay with the context of the text reciting, it is no longer due to the immediate presence of the devil.
Wow.
Though the devil is real, according to our theology, the devil is real, but he is not omnipresent.
Right.
So I would submit that, according to this text, that untreated trauma of what the devil did, if you want to say that, when he was present. Now he's off the scene. But now untreated trauma becomes the tool of spiritual warfare.
Wow. And we are responsible for addressing those traumas. Now, what I mean by that, the devil's no longer held responsible for that. He may have caused some of the consequences, caused some of the effects that we're suffering. And now you must address those residual effects and allow the people to come in so that you can get the healing that you need.
Which means receiving the angels
Yes.
that the Father has sent.
Right.
Because imagine if Jesus goes, I don't need no angels.
Which is what we do. What we do. I get this, Pastor. I know. Yeah, I went through the divorce. I went through the abuse. I went through that. I got this. And yet you're still bleeding. Yet you can't move forward your progress. I know we run out of time, but I tell you, Bishop, chapter 7 and chapter 8, you gotta read those. We're not going to leave it alone. There's so much to pull out of this. This is such a great literary work for you to read. Again, as you see, it ties right in with where we are with transitions. Bishop, I'm done. Okay.
And we're out of time. Listen, if this has blessed you, please let someone know. We'll continue. And thank you for your continued prayers and support of the Soul Care Birthright. It's on Amazon. You can download the Kindle version if you prefer electronically. If you want the book, so you can, put the tags on it and write in it and stuff. You can do that as well with the hard copy. But thank you for your support. And if it blesses you, please let someone know. And by the grace of God, we look forward to seeing you the next time right here on Spirit in Mind.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. We're on Facebook at Spirit in Mind, and we're also on Instagram at Spirit in Mind Live. Join us next time for a new episode of Spirit in Mind.
This program is brought to you by Spirit in Mind, LLC.